And let's start with some international news first, where the European Union on Friday has said that they will be recommending member countries to abolish the biannual clock change. And this comes after a massive citizen appeal was in fact supported by the bloc's biggest economy, Germany. In an online survey, most of the European Union citizens have complained that the time change was actually disruptive. It caused sleep problems to the people and also harmed their health and increased road accidents without actually adding anything in terms of productivity. According to the preliminary results, over 4.6 million European Union citizens responded to the online poll, making it the biggest in the European Union history. The highest number of responses came from Germany and Austria. The United Nations Children's Fund on Friday said that more than 1 million Syrian children are at risk in the event of a military assault on the rebel-held province of Idlib. The UNICEF Director of Emergency Programs, Manuel Fontaine, has said that the agency has drawn up contingency plans, including providing clean water and nutritional supplies to 700,000 people who could flee an attack. The Fontaine has also called on the warring sides to spare the violence. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said on Friday that the Syrian government has every right to chase the militants out of Idlib. He also said that talks are underway for establishing humanitarian corridors. Lavrov has also added that communication between Russia and the United States and Syria is happening in real time. And this comes just days after Russia announced that it will begin a major naval exercise in the Mediterranean off the Syrian coast. An explosion at an electrical substation has plunged a section of the Venezuelan city of Maracaibo into darkness on Friday. According to reports, the explosion took place at around 1 a.m. local time in the Paraíso sector of the city, and some of the nearby transformers simultaneously exploded as well. Now, this is the fourth explosion at an electrical substation in the northwestern state of Zulia so far this year. The authorities are also working to restore the power that they claim is in fact an attempted sabotage by the opposition. The residents of Texas's Aransas are marking the one-year anniversary of Hurricane Harvey, which made landfall on the 25th of August in the year 2017. The Hurricane Harvey was the strongest hurricane to have hit Texas in more than 50 years and also was one of the most expensive natural disasters in the history of the United States. It had killed at least about 35 people and had forced 32,000 people into shelters. The storm had paralyzed Houston and had presented the Trump administration with massive humanitarian rebuilding challenges. The World Food Programme has said that 1.1 million Zimbabweans could in fact need food aid before the next harvest in the year 2019. It said that the rural smallholders are the ones who are facing the maximum risk of food shortage. The food agency has also said that the growing food prices in the country's dire economic state could also affect those who are living in urban areas. It's also added that $71.2 million will be needed for the planned response. $22 million has already been raised so far. The United States on Friday has announced that it will be halting all funding to a United Nations agency that helps the Palestinian refugees. The U.S. State Department has said that the business model and also the fiscal practices of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency were an irredeemably flawed operation, and also the move is likely to further heighten the tensions between the Palestinians and the Trump administration. A spokesperson for Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has denounced the decision as a flagrant assault against the Palestinian people and a defiance of a United Nations resolution. The Nicaraguan government on Friday has ordered the expulsion of a United Nations human rights delegation, and this comes just 2 days after the body released a report condemning the repression and abuses that were committed by President Daniel Ortega's administration. According to the human rights workers, the Nicaraguan government had sent a letter to the United Nations delegation ordering them to leave the country within 2 hours. The leader of the separatist Donetsk region of Ukraine, Alexander Zakharchenko, is believed to have been killed. The official media of the Russian-backed separatists have said in a statement that Zakharchenko was killed in an explosion in central Donetsk. The 42-year-old Zakharchenko was a coal mine electrician before he became the leader of the Donetsk Republic in 2014. Kiev has blamed Russia for fanning the separatist unrest in the region by arming the rebels and also reinforcing them with Russian troops. The Libyan authorities have closed the Tripoli airport on Friday after rockets were fired in its direction. Flights have been diverted to Misrata, which is 120 miles from Tripoli. The Matiga airport also would be closed for about 48 hours. Rival groups have been fighting in Tripoli for several days, with clashes mostly confined to the southern region. Bolivian President Evo Morales has announced on Friday that Bolivia had filed a counter-memorial to a lawsuit filed by Chile in the International Court of Justice. This is the latest iteration of a decades-old dispute over whether Chile has the right to use a river that crosses their shared border. The Chile also uses some of the water from the Silala River to feed the mining operations. Now, Bolivia wants to charge Santiago for it. Bolivia claims that Silala belongs to it as the river originates from springs on its side of the border. Now, the number of cases of abuse in Chile's Roman Catholic Church that are under investigation has more than tripled in the last month. The National Prosecuting Authority is currently investigating as many as 119 cases, and 167 people are under the investigation. Now, this includes 7 bishops and 96 priests. The number of victims stands at 178, 79 of whom are minors, though the type of abuse has not been specified. The prosecutors have accused the clergy of either sexually abusing the members of their congregation or covering up the abuse. Now, dozens of Palestinians have been injured in anti-Israel protests in West Bank after the Israeli troops opened gunfire and lobbed tear gas canisters at the protesters. The Israeli army has said the troops opened fire to try and disperse the Palestinians who rolled burning tires at the fence. Hundreds of Palestinians were protesting in the West Bank village of Ras Karkar against the Israeli land grab for Jewish settlements. At least about 170 Palestinians have been killed since the border demonstrations began. The Canadian Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland said on Friday that the NAFTA negotiators from Canada and the United States have not yet resolved the differences between the two nations. She also said that over the last few days, the countries have had some very positive conversations on a broad range of issues and have also been pretty clear about their red lines. Freeland vowed to defend the national interests of Canada and said that her country is looking for a good deal and not just any deal. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has told the Congress on Friday that he plans to sign a free trade deal with Mexico in 90 days. He's also added that Canada could join if it is willing. In a statement, the US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer has said that the US officials will resume talks with their Canadian counterparts on the 5th of September again. That the aim will be to get a deal that all three nations will be able to sign. Remember, Trump wants a reworked NAFTA deal that eliminates the dairy tariffs of up to 300%, which the United States has to pay, which he says is in fact hurting the US farmers. Now, US President Donald Trump will also not be attending these summits with Asian leaders in Singapore and Papua New Guinea in the month of November. The United States will instead be sending Vice President Mike Pence. Trump was invited to attend the US Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit and the East Asia Summit in Singapore. The White House's decision is likely to raise several questions about Trump's commitment to a regional strategy to counter China. A senior government official of Colombia has said that the Marxist ELN members must free all 19 hostages before President Ivan resumes the peace talks. The government's High Commissioner for Peace, Miguel Ceballos, has said that one of the hostages has in fact been held since 2002. He further added that the deadline to release them will end this week. Now, the National Liberation Army for the ELN was in fact in negotiations with the administration of the former Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos since February 2017. The last round of the talks ended on the 1st of August. They were in fact being held in Cuba. Argentina's peso has managed to crawl up just a bit slightly on Friday after the central bank auctioned $215 million reserves and the IMF issued a strong statement of support for President Mauricio Macri's government. Meanwhile, the country's agricultural ministry has protested about the budget cutbacks, and the members of the opposition have called for countrywide marches on Friday. The country is presently battling inflation of more than 30%. The people of the United States paid their final respects to Senator John McCain as his mortal remains were laid to rest. Now, the war hero and statesman McCain's wife, his 7 children, and also his 106-year-old mother, Rebecca McCain, joined the scores of members of the country's politicians and dignitaries in bidding the senator a farewell. McCain died last Saturday after a year-long bitter battle with cancer. He was 81 years old. The Czech countryside on Friday hosted the annual Hot Air Balloon Championships. Pilots from around the globe were seen firing up their hot air balloons and floating above the countryside. Some 20 crews from as far as Australia, as well as from neighbouring countries like Austria, tested their skills against the wind. Now, the balloons competed in several disciplines, mostly attempting to hit a target with a marker. A procession of Aretha Franklin's family and friends filled the aisles of the Greater Grace Temple in her hometown of Detroit. The church's choir sang Franklin's Say a Little Prayer and her version of Bridge Over Troubled Water. As mourners arrived, they filed past and also paid their respects at Franklin's open casket, where they saw her wearing a sparkling full-length gold dress with sequin heels, the 4th and final outfit of the week. Now, well-known faces including Ariana Grande and her fiancé Pete Davidson walked arm in arm and chatted with the dignitaries such as Bill and Hillary Clinton. Prior to the start of the service at the late Aretha Franklin's funeral, prominent entertainers such as Jennifer Hudson, Faith Hill, Tyler Perry, Whoopi Goldberg, Smokey Robinson and Jennifer Lewis were amongst the guests. The pop star Ariana Grande has performed a Natural Woman at Aretha Franklin's funeral. Following her performance, Bishop Charles Ellis III apologized to Grande for thinking that she was a new something at Taco Bell. He then gave props to the 25-year-old and called her as an icon herself. The Grande hid her face in her arm and was heard saying, "We love you, Aretha," to the crowd. Aretha Franklin was honoured at London's Buckingham Palace on the day of her funeral in Detroit. Troops took part in the Change of God and played Franklin's Respect song as a tribute to the music legend. The soul music may have startled the tourists who were expecting the British pomp and ceremony from the Welsh guards, who were wearing the traditional red military jackets topped by high bearskin hats. But the army tweeted that it wanted to pay tribute to the musical icon and inspiration.